Welcome to Elementary Greek 1. We are setting out on a course of study that, Lord willing, will impact your life, perhaps your family, and we trust definitely your ministry as well. This course is designed with reference to Will Mounce's 2009 Basics of Biblical Greek, and today we begin with chapters 1 and 2, the Greek language and learning Greek. These chapters provide us a foundation for thinking about the Greek language, and they help us to set ourselves on a path that will help us in acquiring the basics of the language this first semester and into next semester in Elementary Greek 2 through the verbs and the verbal system of Greek. Let's begin with just a brief history of Greek. As we look today at a brief history of Greek and then how to acquire the language and the reasoning for acquiring the language, we are thinking big picture ideas, and we start historically big picture. Classical Greek from Homer to Plato, and this period ends with Greek in 3 dialects, and Attic is especially important for the New Testament. You'll often hear ancient Greek called Attic because of its popularity, and this begins our study. The classical period leads to the Hellenistic period in 331 BC. Alexander the Great completed his conquest of Egypt, Palestine, and Syria. He spoke Attic Greek and thus its influence to these regions. Well, how does all this fit with the New Testament? Well, over time, Attic Greek sort of conflates, blends with other languages in the regions that Alexander conquered, and that becomes known as Common Greek, or Koine. This is the first Greek word that you'll see of the semester and of the year in these slides. Koine, Kappa, Omicron, Iota, Nu, Eta, and the little line above the eta going up is an acute accent mark, and Greeks would use those accent marks to raise their voice. And we'll think about this in the near term here in the next couple of chapters of Mounce, and punctuation and syllabification and how accent marks guide pronunciation of words. And here, koine, or common. The Koine of the New Testament, as Mounce notes, opportuned common language and understanding in the pre-Christian era. There's basically a common lingo of Koine Greek that is spoken across cultures. In the sovereignty of God, Alexander the Great's conquests provides a common language, and it's at that time that Christ is born, thus providing a way for the message of Christ to be understood by the masses, and not just the elite, but in a common language. And that's what the New Testament is written in. So, this is the history of Greek. Why learn Greek? An important question. Perhaps you have sensed a call to ministry and you want to teach God's Word more effectively, more clearly. Perhaps you are taking the class simply because it's required, part of the degree program that you would like to complete. So this class is on your registrar. So a number of reasons could be asked, but I've taken a picture here of a Greek text. This is the Nestle-Aland 27th edition, open to Luke 24, the account of Christ's resurrection, and you see the dark line represents the biblical text. If you were to be able to read Greek and follow along your English text, you could correspond with that top portion there and verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, and so on of Luke 24. And it may look a bit like a study Bible because at the bottom there are all these notes, and study Bibles have notes at the bottom, and perhaps that's what this is. But actually, at the bottom, we have what's called the textual apparatus, fancy language for a display of the actual texts, the actual manuscripts, which are behind the top portion, the translation. The top portion, that is a compilation of work by a translation group of people who are a committee or a team who are analyzing the bottom portion, all these various manuscripts that are analyzed, and their readings are compared to get what seems to be the most authentic reading, and that is what is placed in the top portion. And it's that top portion that often guides translations of English or French or whatever translations are being produced, or first-time translations of the Bible into languages that are just being discovered and cataloged. So that bottom portion there is actually manuscripts like this one, P46, and this is Hebrews 1 in P46. Plumeros kai polutropos palai hatheos lalesos tois petrasen en tois prophetais ep escatu ton hemeron tuton alalesin en hemin en huio. That is in Greek, Hebrews 1, 1-2. Now, it's from these manuscripts that scholars, working backward, compile a textual apparatus, and based upon that apparatus, translation committees compile the New Testament text as we use it and to our English translations. So why learn Greek? Because these manuscripts are the closest copies we have to the originals, which we don't have. And ultimately, these are our guides to knowing God. God did not write in English. He chose Greek. He chose to write on papyrus like this, P46, or parchment, some of the bigger manuscripts. And it's from these that we have English translations. So every generation of believers needs to know the original languages. And you're studying Greek, I advise you to take Hebrew as well and take as many years as you can possibly afford and keep going after that on your own. Do all that you can. But every generation needs to know the biblical languages so we can find the most authentic and best manuscripts and produce those in common language of people. So that's why we learn Greek. As Mounce notes, the only people I've heard say that Greek is not important are those who, there you have it. But once you know Greek, you do know the Bible better and God better, and there's such joy in it. And I think you're going to find that even this semester and definitely by the end of the year. Well, let's think for a few moments here about how you can learn Greek. Well, memorization. There's no substitute, and there are no salesmen who can come along and give you an alternative way to learn Greek more quickly or more easily. It's simply memorization. It's work. It's memorizing vocab, principles of grammar and paradigms. That is, there are certain frames or tables for nouns and pronouns, for verbs and participles that must be memorized just as if someone is learning Spanish or French or German or Russian or one of the Chinese dialects. And we use our voices, verbal memorization, using a voice recorder. There are many apps that are available for your phone, And these can help you as you record your own voice, reading Greek, reading vocabulary words, sometimes even being comical, especially with vocabulary. And we'll think about that as we go. The more creative we can be in memorizing, and the more consistent, which leads us to thinking about discipline, the more successful. So the more creative and the more consistent, the more successful. I suggest daily discipline. Now this first week we're just introducing some basic concepts, but even in toward the end of this week, in memorizing the alphabet and punctuation and syllabification, and especially as we start into nouns in chapters 5 and 6, you will need to practice daily. I suggest this routine Monday through Friday, 15 minutes before breakfast, reviewing vocab, reviewing grammar, 45 minutes after dinner, and toward that end of the day period, once we get to more translation in the workbook, to work on your workbook in the evening, and some review every morning. If you do this 5 days a week, you will be successful in this course. If you do this only 1 day a week, you will most likely fail the course. Somewhere in between, you can do the math from there. But I suggest every day this kind of a pattern. And as you practice this and make this your pattern, you will have great reward. And I want you to enjoy all that you can of this course and of God's Word. With that, we set out. Let's journey together.